But in a situation where you find that a look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. So we're going to go straight into the newspaper headlines this morning, and we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. The major headline on the front page of Daily Trust: why CBN will redesign currency notes. That is the major story on the front page of the Daily Trust. And it comes with riders that says over 85% of currency in circulation is outside banks. EFCC commends initiative to clamp down on hoarders. Experts correct politicians keep money in dollars, and decision good for economy. Now, these are the riders supporting the major headline. And of course, there's an infographic here of the timelines for all the currency redesigns that were done to the Naira. Petrol scarcity worsens in Lagos, Abuja, Kano as marketers blame depot price hike. Details of that on page 18. At the bottom of the front page there is a belt that has these stories. Return Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million naira damages, court orders federal government. And stay-at-home husband sues wife for not disclosing her salary. Details of that on page 16. We need 30 years of consistent investment to control flood, says minister. Details of that on page 25. And moving towards the top of the front page below the masthead, federal government says America also unsafe as U.S. orders evacuation of citizens from Nigeria. Details of that on page 25. National carrier government operators disagree over partnership with Ethiopian Airlines. And IDB expresses concern over high number of out-of-school children in the north. Details of that can be found on page 6. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
And moving on swiftly to the Nation's newspaper, it has the major headline: PDP crisis, Otom attacks Atiku as Mimiko rejects job. Setback for PDP presidential candidates in Benue. Ex-Ondo governor vows not to ditch Wike. Interesting developments there with one of the major opposition party. And moving on to other issues on the front page, courts to Kogi, don't disrupt Dangote's operation. We thought we have heard the last of this incident. And to other headlines, marketers raise petrol price to 179 from 169. No admission offer has been cancelled, says JAMB. You'll find that story on page 5. Online Lotto casino orders to pay taxes directly to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Security alert, no reason for evacuation of U.S. citizens. That is coming from the federal government. And court dismisses suit seeking Abiodun's disqualifications. These are the stories, the major stories on the front pages of the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning. All
right, next we take a look at the Punch newspaper, and it goes with a political headline. It says 2023 Lagos, Kaduna, Rivers, Kano voters to top INEC register. And it comes with riders here. It says 2.7 million illegal registrants deleted, 23 registration officers under sanction. And INEC to display register from November 12th to November 25th seeks cooperation. Going down the front page there, Buhari eyes over $1.3 billion trade with South Korea. And right at the bottom of the front page, NDLEA freezes 20 billion naira in socialites' 103 bank accounts. And tears as BRT vehicle kills trader, apprentice and laborer. Federal government announces preferred bidders for Abuja, Lagos airports. And going towards the top of the front page, beside the masthead, EFCC rearranges suspended AGF over 109 billion naira fraud. And at the very top of the front page, flooding, experts warn of epidemic as corpses float. And DSS arrests terror suspects. US evacuates non-emergency staff. CBN plans Naira redesign to counter counterfeiting and kidnapping. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper this morning.
Moving on to This Nigeria, one of the newest additions to the newspaper family. The major headline here on the front page reads, flood disaster death toll hit 612, says federal government. 2,776 persons injured, 123,807 houses completely damaged, over 1,427 million persons displaced, 392,399 farmland destroyed. Government earmarked 80 billion to fix damaged infrastructure. You would also find there on the front page pictures of the upgraded and rehabilitated Ebute Elefun fire station in Lagos Island by the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. And two other stories on the front page: debt, stop mortgaging future of Nigerians, Labour warns FG. NASO calls for probe of top military officials on oil theft. You'll find that story on page 5. And to other stories, Soludo reverses decision on tax payment by wheelbarrow pushers. Others, you'll find that story on page 10. These are the major stories on the front page of this Nigeria.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is First News newspaper, and it carries this headline on the front page: Terror alert, U.S. moves to evacuate embassy staff, citizens from Abuja. And we have a rider here that says, warns, we have limited ability to provide emergency services to U.S. citizens in Nigeria. No cause for alarm. We won't be stampeded by U.S., UK terror alerts. Federal government reacts. Says security agencies on top of matter. Nigeria safe. Alerts evacuations aimed at embarrassing security agencies, says military sources. And don't trivialize terror alert. SDP, YPP warn federal government. Forgiving Osimwajo, says Tinubu. That is another headline on the front page of First News. And CBN to release redesigns Naira notes December 15th as Northern Group kicks opposes Apex Bank's plan. 2023, 9.93 million voters to decide Atiku, Tinubu, Obi, other candidates' fate, says INEC. And it comes with a rider here that says elections results will be transmitted electronically. Still talking 2023, we cannot work for Atiku in Benue, says Autumn. And it comes with a rider that says, you can't lie against me in public, beg for pardon in secret. And still talking politics, 2023 Wike Atiku feud will cost PDP presidency, says Adeyanju. And Quarter John suit seeking Ekweremadu's sack. And that is another headline on the front page of First News newspaper. Pivoting back to politics, Kwankwaso won't collapse campaign for anybody, says spokesperson, dismisses merger rumor. Olisametu resigns from PDP and partisan politics. Talking about the flood disaster, Bielsa's situation pathetic, says Governor Emmanuel. He donates 100 million naira to victims. Return Nnamdi Kanu to Kenya, pay him 500 million naira, court orders federal government. And Wike swears in ex-APC spokesman 17 others as new commissioners. Still on the front page of the First News newspaper, how Adamu withdrew 3 billion naira from APC's secret accounts illegally, says sacked directors. And at the very top of the front page there, online betting, FIRS begins tax deduction at transaction point, gives operators December 31st deadline. Now, these are the stories on the front page of the First News newspaper this morning.
We have the Nigerian News Direct Nest, and the major headline is staying with major development in the polity. Existing currency expiration. CBN's deadline shocks politicians, shatters 2023 election cash for vote plans. It will be interesting to see how that decision would impact the 2023 election. It has several riders which are similar to what you have taken on the front pages of other papers. And moving on to other report, terror alert, political economic activities suffer in Abuja as U.S. plans evacuation of citizens. Reconciliation of presidential aspirants. I have nothing against Oshibajo. I would work with others, says Tinubu. These the stories that are different from the ones we have looked at on the front pages of the Nigerian News Direct.
All right, next we will take a look at the Blueprint newspaper, and it comes with this headline on the front page. EFCC hails Apex Bank's move to tackle inflationary trends. And that is a story that's making rounds on all the papers this morning. Going down the front of the front page, towards the bottom, Lagos, FFS, Lasambus, Lasema, others save WAEC officials from inferno. And FFK to Obaseki, Atiku will destroy Nigeria, not Tinubu. And 21st National Sports Festival, Buhari flags off Torch of Unity. Court awards IPOB leader Kanu 500 million naira over arrests, and Buhari hails election of Nigeria's Owodumi in Canadian city. Dangote refinery will transform downstream sector. That is another headline on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Now, these are some of the stories on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
And finally, we'll be looking at the Leadership newspaper this morning. The major headline there is staying with the move by the central bank to mop 3.2 trillion from circulation. But moving on to other interesting stories there on the front page, the Northeast Development Commission present relief materials to Bauchi flood victims. China honors 51 Nigerians for outstanding contribution. It will be interesting to see those who made this leave. IPAC, CSO reject salary increment for president, governors, and others. I think this is reacting to the news of plans by the Revenue Mobilization and Fiscal Planning Commissions to review salary of public office holders. PMB 6 expanded trade relations beyond gas exports. This is coming from his trip to South Korea. And of course, terror alert. We won't be stampeded, FG tells U.S. government. These are the major stories on the front page of Leadership newspaper. We would now take a very quick break. We'll be joined by our analysts to bring you further details on the story that made the front pages this morning. Please don't go away.
But in a situation where you find that they must look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. We would now be moving straight into dissecting the issues that made the front pages this morning. And to do justice to these issues this morning is the editor-in-chief, Dateline newspaper, Malan Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Good morning. As always, it's good to be here.
Thank you. When Ibrahim came into the studios today, he told me he missed whatever it was, whether it was his hunches or it was his head that stopped him from coming out in brown. If not, we would have been looking the same. And so when I saw you, I said, okay, somehow, some spirit was speaking to everybody today to choose brown.
It would have been a brown show this morning.
Yeah. That is, by the way. Moving on to the issue that seemed to have caught up with everybody yesterday, from the blues, from nowhere. The Apex Bank, by midday yesterday, came up with plans to redesign the major currencies. They advised three very critical reasons. One, they said because of improved technologies, we are beginning to see more and more counterfeiting, especially in our higher denominations, and that has been corroborated by security reports that they've received. The second reason that was adduced was that out of the 3.2 trillion that is in circulation, as far as their record is concerned, 2.7, about 85% of that volume is outside the banks. In other words, so when they make decisions to mop up cash or increase cash in circulation, it really doesn't have effect because that decision is binding only on 15% of our total circulation. But three, and very important, was that they feel that those cash outside circulation has fueled or triggered or rather supported the activities of terrorism, financing, as well as other illicit funds activities that we have seen in our economy, which put it completely off the radar of both the central bank and security agencies. My question is taking long, but I am driving at a very important point. What they did not tell us, which the analysts are saying, is that this may be targeted at the fundings being used to thwart the 2023 election. What did you make of all of the things that the governor said yesterday vis-a-vis other analysts?
Well, he has given his reasons as to be expected. But, if you take a cursory look at some of the things that he said, you will find it difficult to understand how we'll be able to do all that. Like when you talk about checking the activities of kidnappers, for instance, they have always, floated with the times. That's the kidnappers. Sometimes they will not even ask for money. Sometimes they will they will ask you to actually bring a particular brand of motorcycle. So even with this, without the security agents actually checking on their activities, they will still find a way to remain afloat. What I actually see about all this is the fact that probably the views of President Buhari did not change even from his days as the military head of state. Because if you remember, I think in 1984 or so, we also had to change the colors of the currency, and then the same reasons were adduced, even though that time we were not having issues of kidnapping, at least not on this magnitude anyway. So if you are talking about that, then you will look at our policy, when it even comes to our own currency. For instance, how many of us still remember what our coins look like? We are supposed to have coins, but they are not in circulation. And then we are also talking about the need to do major of our transactions electronically. Have we been able to do that? So these are issues that the Apex Bank actually should have, explain to the public. And then how much is it going to cost Nigeria? Because right now we are talking about the fact that we don't have money. So how much is this going to cost the economy? And then if you juxtapose that, with our need for money in critical places, is this what we need at this particular point in time? And then if you are also talking about so many money outside the banking system, then I will tell you that most of this currency you are talking about, some of them are actually within the government cycle. If you go to government houses, they keep money in cash, and then you wonder what they are going to do with it. So what I will expect the central bank to do at this particular time is to make sure that nobody is shortchanged because of this. Because when we had this in 1984, so many people were affected, because the time that was given was actually very short. So I see them maybe engaging with stakeholders to be able to, do it in a way that it will not affect so many people.
All right. Well, this is a long discussion with different facets to it. So I think we'll just have to keep an eye on it and see how things unfold. Let's move slightly away from that and to something very, very concerning. I know it's something that's very dear to Sunday's heart. The fuel scarcity. It has. They said it was because of flood that we don't have fuel. Now the waters have receded, but we still don't have it. And we're getting reports that it's getting worse in Lagos and Kano. And marketers are jerking up the price now, blaming depots for that, placing the blame that NNPC depots do not have the product, so they have to go to private depots to actually get that, and the private depots are the ones who jerked up the price, and they cannot afford to sell. How do we get out of this?
Well, the NNPC should tell us that because that's one of their responsibilities anyway. But as it is, they have appeared incapable, of running the petroleum industry. Like you said, we were told in the beginning that it had to do with the flooding in Lokoja, in Kogi State. Now the waters have receded. The road is free, even though some motorists are still having challenges because of the destruction, to the road infrastructure and things like that. But then it's like there are so many things that we are not being told, For instance, if you say the private depots, where are they getting the oil from? Because as far as I can remember, I think the NNPC is like the sole importer of petroleum products in the country at the moment. So why should you allow maybe the marketers to be having a field day without you playing the regulatory role that you are supposed to play. Because when this continues to happen, it's actually you and I that end up being affected the most, because we have to use we have to buy the fuel, we have to do so many things, with the fuel. But now that we don't even know what is actually happening, so we don't even know when this is going to be over, because most of the reasons that they gave us in the beginning are actually beginning to fritter away. So I think the government needs to do more than this.
Interesting. In Nigeria, just about everything is a reason for something not to work. It started with the Russian-Ukrainian war, and then we moved on to something else. And for 5 months, we couldn't explain what exactly the situation was. For members of household, if you ever take the time to sort of collate the total amount you spend on fuel, whether for generator or for your vehicle, you begin to understand how much of a chunk or a percentage this crisis takes away from your disposable income. Moving on to other conversations that seem to have made a number of the front pages is the issue of the security alert. 1 minute, the DSS were responding that they are aware and there is no need for alarm, and they're on top of it. The next minute, another government spokesminister comes out and denies in entirety, this threat. And then the next minute, the US is elevating the threat to the level of asking citizens to evacuate. And before you know it, we have another drama from the FG saying America is also safe, they want to evacuate. Is this becoming a child's play? Shouldn't this really be a matter of concern? Because, in the last couple of days, we closed very late. Those days, you are still worried about the bits and pieces and bits of hold-ups here and there. This time, once it's 5 o'clock, everybody clears out of the city, in response to the heightened fear. And why are we treating this with levity? Has the U.S. handled it badly? Do they not share intelligence with our own people? Or is there something we should know? What are you worried about the way this is, how messy this is becoming?
Yeah, certainly, because like you said, we shouldn't make it look like a tit for tat, because the U.S. is saying this, and then we also have to respond I don't think that's the way to go. Like you mentioned, for the DSS, they wouldn't want to take like a political aspect to it. Maybe that's what the Minister of Information actually did. Because even in their own statement, what did the DSS say? They said, some of these things we have already said it, so we are on top of it. People should be calm and remain alert and what have you. What the US said, it's better late than never, like people will say. Now that they are telling us this, they didn't say it's really actually going to happen, but there is this risk. So they're telling their people to take precaution, which is something that we actually do not do in this country.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we will just allow people to
walk into danger.
And then in the end, we will say, if you make the mistake of telling people they may not even come out of their houses, it's better for them to remain at home than for them to actually run into a danger that they didn't even anticipate. But when you are sure, when you are like, you have all the information at your disposal, that you shouldn't, you should watch over, what's happening around in your surroundings and things like that, then good for you. Because so many people cannot go to the places that they used to go to, and because of things like this. And do we need actually the US coming out to say this for us to understand that there are actually security challenges all over the place? Believe me, if the newspapers are to report all the cases that are happening, we may end up with no space for any other story, because there are so many things that are happening. So what the Nigerian government should actually do is to look at what the United States is saying. See the ones that they can act upon. The ones that they think are not significant, just, nobody is asking you to come out and tell us the way you have to react. You don't have to do that, because if you look at it now, after Nigeria, they are issuing the same thing in South Africa, which means it's something that is routine as far as the United States is concerned. Anytime they see things that, look somehow to them, they alert the people, because they are accountable to their people, which is actually not the case in Nigeria. Sometimes, you just have to be your own government. You have to watch over your own security, make provisions for your own sustenance and things like that. It's like the government just exists to like exploit you the more. Because right now we are talking about trying to expand the tax net, without anything in return.
The tax poverty. somebody said.
You can also see what Soludo is saying. He's reversing himself on the wheelbarrow taxing and all that.
Well, talking about tax regimes and what we do with these tax monies, I mean, the editorial on Daily Trust newspaper this morning actually touched on something that the recent floods brought to the fore. It's something we already knew, but the recent flood issues actually brought to the fore this issue of our road network. You have a situation whereby one bridge collapses somewhere and everything is at a standstill, because that is the only road connecting places to each other. And most likely these bridges and these roads have been left abandoned, and they have not been looked at, they have not been taken care of, they have not been properly maintained, and that is why they are in this particular state. Is there a need, just like the editorial said, to formulate a new approach to road maintenance in Nigeria?
I want to side with that point of view, because we should know that the editorial for a newspaper, that's like its own opinion. And the newspaper, if you look at the people that it's actually serving, then you understand the strength of its opinion. Actually, we have not been able to manage our roads. Like we keep mentioning the need to have things like the way bridges, which we don't have at the moment. So people are just taking all sorts of loads, all these articulated vehicles that you see on the road. Nobody knows exactly the amount of weight, that they are moving about with. So you can see the effect and impact on the roads. And there is nobody to tell them what to do. There is nobody to say, don't do this. If you take what is happening, within our neighbors, like if you are going into Cameroon, for instance, the moment you step out of Nigeria, you have to use the weighbridge. If what you are carrying is beyond what their roads can take, you have to find a way of providing job for their small people. So this is something that our government should actually do, so that the roads can be maintained for a significant amount of time, instead of just if you do new roads today, then in another 2 or 3 years you are
still doing the same
road. That's not what we should be talking about. So I think it's a very good one that the Daily Trust editorial is actually talking about an issue as important as this.
Interesting. Moving on to politics, we are seeing discordant and continue with the PDP. Otom coming out to say, I won't work for Atiku, you beg me in private and tell lies about me in public. Mimiko is saying he would not betray Wiki and all of that. How much of this lingering disagreement, how much would this impact the chances of the PDP in your views?
The presidential candidate of the PDP is actually seeing, all the setbacks. And I want to believe he's also looking at the best way to actually handle them. But looking at it from my own perspective, if people are coming out to say that they will not support you, the problem is they will try as much as they can to see that you don't succeed in the end. So that's why I think the presidential candidate of the PDP should actually worry. The ones that he can salvage to get back on board, he should try to do that. But then he should also know the ones that are like beyond
redemption.
You know, the ones that he, no matter the time that he's going to spend, he may not likely have their support. So he shouldn't allow that to like stop him from reaching out to places where he needs to reach out to, because in the end, winning the election is the ultimate. And even the governors that are, or the politicians that are now coming out to say all these things, believe me, by the time they see that clearly this candidate is going to win, they will change their tunes. You know, they will change their dance step and things like that, because the hypocrisy, you know, in politics in Nigeria is just beyond imagination.
All right, well, all twists and turns there, and we saw the number of registered voters. Actually, the INEC has said we have like 93 million or so, and there's this cleanup that was done on the voters register and all that. Do you think that will have a major impact when it comes to the election itself?
Well, not much, because as far as I am concerned, I don't think we'll have up to 50% of that registered voters, you know, taking part in the 2023 election, because it has always been the case. You have 80 million, and then in the end, 26, 30, 31 million will be the ones to actually decide. But this should help politicians to know where they should channel all their energies, and because if, for instance, you keep hammering on a state that may not give you up to like 1 million votes, you know, honestly, you should look at the ones where you have leverage, where you can actually get the actual number. So it's good for politicians to decide, and even for the electoral body to actually make its plan, so that it's not caught unawares in the end, like maybe preparing for 10 million voters, when in the end, you know, you may end up with a huge, you know, turnout in the end. So I think this should give the politicians the chance to know where to target and things like that. And then for the people to also understand the power that they have and see how they can get the best out of it.
Interesting way to bring this conversation to a close, for the people to understand the power they have and ultimately apply these powers. As the politician will always say, or as political maxims will always say, power indeed actually rests with the people. If you are aware of how much power you have, then you can apply it in a manner that the governors will not be speaking for you and saying we will not. They're just one person at the end of the day. I hope political enlightenment and education gets to that level where we can truly take power back from these people and decide for ourselves the caliber of people who should lead this country on our behalf. We've been talking with the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, Malan Nasrullah, who has provided us very insightful perspectives on the issues that made the front pages today. It's a pleasure to have you join us again. We hope to see you when next we call.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
We will take a short break. We'll see you at the top of the hour with more interest.
When the situation where you find that look at the
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that